Hello everyone. So in the first class we have discussed about how globalization is changing in the recent times, what are its implications in the world order, how the world as a collectively is moving towards friendshoring in the recent times. All these things we see in the first class. In this class we talk more about China, what China is really up to. Let's get started. So two incidents, more or less so everything we talk will revolve around these two incidents. The first thing is on 9th of December this year. There has been clash between Indian Army and Chinese PLA along a region which is near to the Tawang. So why this is happening? Contextualizing why constant border clashes between India and China is being a part of the norm nowadays. That is going to be our major thesis for today's talk. Secondly, if you see, there is China withdrawn its zero COVID policy. Zero COVID policy means it's been enforcing strict lockdowns to contain COVID. Now that policy has, in this video, has been circulating from Foxconn company, which has manufacturing most of the iPhone products. Now people were jumping out of the factory and running to homes. You can somehow connect this with the migrant crisis in India. So why this is geopolitically important is, analysts are viewing this as the first popular movement against Xi Jinping. Now, how this is going to impact relations with India and China's overall attitude. That's what we are going to see. Let's get started. So, before understanding what China is up to or what China is looking ahead, we need to have a broad understanding how China has evolved over the years. So if you look at Chinese growth, in last 30 years from 1990s, China has acquired exponential level of economic growth. It is in 1978, China opened its economy and acquired some kind of capitalist ideologies. Beyond that, in 1990s till recently, you can see extreme level of growth that is happening. By that time, more than 9% average growth per year is happening. Now, militarily, how this is impacting Chinese perspective is, this era is considered divided into two phases. Say from 1990s to 2010s, 2008 precisely. This era is called era of acquiring strength. What China here is doing is, whatever the military gain or economic gain it is getting, it is investing it in militarily. You can see Chinese army modernizing during this phase, Chinese army expanding during this phase, China is building nuclear submarines of its own. So all this happened during this phase. Now once a threshold is crossed, that's what we are seeing in the recent times. Once a threshold is crossed, that is, China now believes that it is well capable of at least countering some of its adversaries in certain regions. For say in South China Sea, despite the international order, it is continuing to build the artificial islands and claiming the territories. That is exactly what India is also seeing along in Indian borders. Japan is facing similar issue over the Senkaku Islands. So we are currently going through an era of muscle flexing. Now what's next? To have a picture on where China is heading to or what is China's vision, we should look at the resolution of 6th plenum of Communist Party of China. Now this plenum, if you read, it all talks about a new era. What new era it is talking about? The whole new era is dislodging a US hegemonic world order that is of today into a Chinese centric world order. Everything China does today, that is BRI or investing in countries like Sri Lanka, Iran, all this having a vision of evolving a Chinese centric world order. Now how China is going to get this? Xi Jinping has been propounded as a leader who should take China from muscle flexing era to Chinese centric world order. He has been raised to the level of Mao, China has been popularizing the idea of nationalism. Movies on Chinese nationalism, dramas, everything, red tourism. Some way or the other, there is hyper-nationalist ideologies are being spread throughout China. Socialism with Chinese characteristic, that is the economic model China is propounding. So all these ideas we are coming from 6th plenum of Communist Party of China. So this is how, what one explanation of it. But is this the complete picture? That we have to still see. On one side, China is grown immensely over the past 30 years. Now this strength is being utilized geopolitically or strategically to gain military and other advantages. Now even at the same time, when China is aiming for a Chinese-centric world order, Chinese economy is currently showing immense signs of reversal of growth cycle. Some examples which you can see is aging population. China's mean age is 38. You can compare this with that of 28 in India. Recently in 2016, China has withdrawn its one-child policy. Now the problem is, it was much easier for China to implement one-child policy, because if there is more child, you will not be given certain benefits, you will be moved to the labor camp. All these coercive measures could be implemented. Now once the policy is taken, population is still not making more babies. You cannot force people to make more babies. So, and even they start making more babies, it will still take some time to reflect economically. So Chinese having aging population as well as shrinking workforce. This has been one major issue with China. Now if you compare this with US situation, US is also having a very aged population. How it is managing is, it has the opportunity of migration. Even you consider the CEOs of tech companies like Google, Microsoft, all these people are one way or other migrated from India. But China cannot have that opportunity. It is propounding culturalist ideologies, nationalist ideologies. There is no option of immigration to China. So aging population with shrinking workforce, that is one major issue that is constraining Chinese economy in the recent times. It is not the end of it. Chinese debt is currently reported as 275% of its GDP. Now when China is growing very high, China is showing consistent growth rate, that was okay. But once the growth started retarding, now the 275% of the GDP growth, that become very difficult to manage. There are reports that in the next decade, there is no way China can grow beyond 2.5 to 3%. Now, if China can only maintain this growth, what is the implications of this? Suppose if USA is maintaining a growth rate of 1.5% or 1.3%, it will take at least 2000 till 2060 for China to reach the level of USA in nominal GDP terms. Today, China's nominal GDP is 1/3 less than that of US. To cover up that, it will take at least next 4 decades. Now, if this is the situation, how is Xi Jinping will able to carry China from muscle flexing to Chinese-centric world order? And above all this, the failure of zero COVID policy. So one way or the other, there has been immense pressure over the Chinese state or Chinese Communist Party. Now it is in this context we should see whatever China is doing along the borders or geopolitically or every sphere, what China is doing, we need to see from this perspective. One example I can cite, recently the Sri Lankan crisis, Sri Lankan political economic crisis happened, and one notable thing about that was China was reluctant to give a hand to Sri Lanka. China was reluctant to extend its debt or take over more debt of Sri Lanka. So why this happened? One way or other it is related to the mounting debt in Chinese economy. China is reluctant to more invest in projects that are economically unviable but strategically important. These kind of projects are becoming less interesting in case of China. Why? Because there is huge debt burden already on the economy, and the BRI investment are still increasing and yet to take place at many parts of the world, including CPEC. So this is how you should interpret China. Now, in this perspective, if you look at why the clashes happened in Tawang, or why the Arunachal borders is still becoming an issue, are China up to just for a piece of land? Thinking this will be very narrow view. China is this policy is having some level of muscle flexing in it. And why exactly China is targeting India? There is two reasons for this. One is economically. If you look at the strength, we have told that Chinese economy is showing signs of growth reversal. At the same time, Indian economy is going through a phase of demographic dividend. From 2018 to 2061, according to World Bank report, India is going through a phase of demographic dividend. So even though today India is 5 times smaller economy than China, there is huge level of catch up that is possible during these times. So economically, if in Asia there is a country that can stand up to China, then that is India. Secondly, there is military strategies of India. That majorly recently the development of Quad. So forming of a grouping of countries that is perceived to be counter China or anti China, that is always going to XYZ Chinese Communist Party. So it is in 2020 the Quad was formed. It is along that the first summit happened. It is along during that time itself the border clashes, border issues were heightened. So some level of muscle flexing, these aspects should reflect your interpretation of what China is doing. Secondly, is this a nationalist response to internal problems China is facing? This aspect is, China is led by a strongman government. We have talked about how Xi Jinping is being raised to the level of Mao. He is giving a cult image. Now, sitting from that image, there is very little scope for China to have a creative discussion on borders, to settle borders amicably with India. So, when issues are coming against the strongman leaders, one approach to divert the attention, one approach to keep the nationalist or patriotic spirit in the country going, that is by delving into incidents like Tawang, what happened in Tawang. One other simple clue which you get from this is, it is not just a military conflict. Whatever happened in Galwan Valley as well as in Tawang recently, they are not coming with machine guns, they are not coming with advanced technologies. They are coming with lathis. Advanced army like Chinese army is coming with lathis, with spikes on it. So these kind of tools are being used. So what they are up to is, there is some level of internal aspect to it. And at the same time, when this is happening, different set of psychological warfare, certain videos are being released, which shows that Indian soldiers are being punished, or there were like demoral type of videos are being released. So everything suggests that there is some internal dimensions to it. At the same time, there is muscle flexing that is happening, geopolitical order that is happening at the other side. Moving ahead, so in this context, what should India do to handle China? So to clue to this will come from the Special Competitive Study Project of US Defense. So what this says is, this report says how for the in the foreseeable future, how the recent developments, rise of China or rise of developments along with Russia, Ukraine war, how this is going to strategically impact US. So that is being studied in this report. And this report says the persistent clashes below armed conflicts, that something like the salami slicing strategy. There will not be direct conflict, but certain clashes will happen and some territory will be occupied every time. So these kind of strategies are not just one-time incident, and they are bound to continue. Now data theft, cyber attack, these are going to be a norm of future warfare or future attacks. We recently seen the Ames case. Now the warfare is individualization of warfare. What does this mean? Earlier the war, when war is happening between two countries, the fight was between this country of army of country A with army of country B. Now it is going more further with data, with personalized online data. Now the countries are able to gain exact personalized data of different important personnel in the other country, and they will, with this data, they will try to attack the certain persons. Something like important person like defense minister or opposition minister, or all these people will be attacked by using psychological moves, psychological warfare, different kinds of coercive measures. So that is individualization of warfare is happening. And emerging technologies like AI, space militarization is going on. This militarization is going to increase. At the same time, these are out of most of the international laws. There is no NSG, there is no such a system to prevent proliferation of this. And more importantly, industrial base is going to take a major call. What does it mean? If we look at the Ukraine-Russia war, it has been continuing from last 9 months and it's still going on. So to win a war, only having the advanced technology is not enough. You need some industrial base so that you can continue the war for certain period of time. So from that perspective, having an industrial base is very important. And if these all are written from US perspective, which is equally applicable to India also. So if you look from this perspective, this is why industrial base, US is not having an industrial base that is in today's level as compared to that of China. So it is in this context friend shoring is coming into picture. It is in this context India become a much important ally or partner of US in the future global order. So how India should respond to China means India should take into account all these developments, and India should develop capabilities in all these regards. It is not a one-time measure. India's counterbalancing strategy with bringing together like-minded people like USA, Japan, Australia into a one umbrella. This is all going to work. But on larger scale, we need India to develop cyber attack capabilities, cyber defense capabilities, individualization, which is a part of cyber warfare, emerging technologies, militarization. India should play an active role and develop capabilities on this regard. That is how India can somehow manage or handle an aggressive Chinese strategies. So that's all for today. Work out these questions and comment in the Telegram group or under the YouTube video. Why persistent border clashes with China? Is border solution with China feasible? How India should handle Chinese aggressiveness? All these questions write in the comment box. That's all for today. Thank you.